A young physician in Tokyo named Kosuda met a college friend who had been studying Zen. The young doctor asked him what Zen was. "I cannot tell you what it is," the friend replied, "but one thing is certain. If you understand Zen, you will not be afraid to die." "That's fine," said Kosuda. "I will try it. Where can I find a teacher?" "Go to the master Nanin." So Kosuda went to call on Nanin. He carried a dagger 9.5 inches long to determine whether or not the teacher was afraid to die. When Nanin saw Kosuda, he exclaimed, "Hello, friend. How are you? We haven't seen each other for a long time." The perplexed Kosuda replied, "We've never met before." "That's right," answered Nanin. "I mistook you for another physician who is receiving instruction here." With such a beginning, Kosuda lost the chance to test the master. So reluctantly, he asked if he might receive some instruction. Nanin said, "Zen is not a difficult task. If you're a physician, treat your patients with kindness. That is Zen." Kosuda visited Nanin 3 times. Each time, Nanin told him the same thing. "A physician should not waste time around here. Go home and take care of your patients." It was not clear to Kosuda how such teaching could remove the fear of death. So on the 4th visit, he complained, "My friend told me that when one learns Zen, one loses his fear of death. Each time I came here, you tell me to take care of my patients. I know that much. If that's your so-called Zen, I'm not going to visit you anymore." Nanin smiled and patted the doctor. "I've been too strict with you. Let me give you a koan." He presented Kosuda with Joshu's Mu to work over, which is the first mind-enlightening problem in the book called The Gateless Gate. Kosuda pondered this problem of Mu, no thing, for 2 years. At length, he thought he had reached a certainty of mind, but his teacher commented, "You were not in it yet." Kosuda continued in concentration for another 1.5 years. His mind became placid. Problems dissolved. No thing became the truth. He served his patients well, and without even knowing it, he was free from concern of life and death. Then he visited his teacher Nanin, and his old teacher just smiled. Good evening, all you future corpses. Welcome to our Beginner's Mind session. I use this salutation on a very regular basis now, and it's meant to have the same effect as our evening verse about awaken, take heed, do not squander your life. Now, when Roshi Egyoku teaches us, we have to say Roshi Egyoku now because we have 2 Roshis here. She says we're supposed to have the hair stand out on the back of our necks. Gutsy. But it's my kind of a personal mission to keep that at the forefront. So many of us don't, and I really don't mean it in like this, gruesome, negative way. I'm going to die. It's to help people wake up and appreciate their life. And when you really experience or face impermanence, it'll do that. And interestingly, I stole that from a book by Sally Tisdale, Advice for Future Corpses and Those Who Love Them, a practical perspective on death and dying. And Sally was just here for a workshop. I hope many of you attended it. It was really quite good. The book is actually quite good. So that being said, thank you for the gift of your presence this evening on the first full day of Beginner's Mind Session. We have a tradition here on Great Dragon Mountain where we remember our Native American heritage and the Tongva, who once walked these grounds that we're on right now, but before all the pavement and the concrete. Roshi has provided us some words. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my deep respect to the Tongva people and elders and ancestors, past, present, and future. I acknowledge and offer deep gratitude to this Tongva land and water that supports us. And we're gathered here right now together, as we're gathered here right now together. And I invite you to join me in that acknowledgement, that respect, that gratitude. In San Luis Obispo, with our San Luis Obispo Zen Circle, and Kanjin in Los Olivos and Santa Barbara, we remember the Chumash Indians that were the local indigenous group. Some of you new folks commented on the ice cream truck. It's been here longer than I've been here. Geshe? I mean, like decades, right? But I have it on good authority. Sensei Koan said there is a certified awakening experience that came from the sound of that truck. I mean, if a pebble hitting bamboo can do it, why not Jack in the Box? I always have loved this Beginner's Mind session. It's one of my favorites. I've tried not to miss it. I've been here, this is my 19th year, and I've tried to attend as many as possible, and I've only missed a few. It's wonderful, really, because it's usually populated with a lot of beginners, folks that haven't done this kind of stuff before, and peppered with some of us who have a little bit more experience. But, as Suzuki Roshi famously said in his prologue to Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. So tonight I wanted to explore a little bit about this idea of beginner's mind, and at some points kind of going back to some fundamental basic Buddhist stuff. And my apologies to you experts in the room. The word in Japanese is Shōgen, meaning beginner's mind. So this refers to an attitude of openness and eagerness, a lack of preconceptions when studying a subject, even when studying at an advanced level, just as a beginner would. And it's, of course, often used in the study of Zen Buddhism and the Japanese martial arts. Meister Eckhart said, he was a German theologian, philosopher, and mystic, be willing to be a beginner every single morning. I think it should be every single moment. So our young physician in that koan, Kasuda, was a beginner. Didn't know anything about Zen. So what brought you to Great Dragon Mountain for this session? Is it like the young physician? So you can make yourself, so you won't be afraid to die? We all have different reasons. Roshi Gyoku was actually on a bet. Somebody dared her that she couldn't sit sesshin, all those hours of sitting. She took him up on the bet. Look at her now, still sitting. Then just the other day, she spoke of her beginning as she was doing practice in the early years. She knew she was trying to change and be somebody other than who she was. So this is akin, I believe, to marrying somebody and thinking, I'll change him or her in the course of the marriage. Good luck with that. Maybe you just wanted to get some peace and quiet. Get away from the rat race for a while. Maybe your own suffering has brought you here. We speak of the three poisons in Buddhism: greed, anger, and ignorance. Each of them actually having an antidote. Last year, I think it was July, there was a group of us from the San Luis Obispo Zen Circle. We went to Yokoji. Taikon was with us, and Kanjin was with us. And it was really quite wonderful. As I said, we listened to the poetry of the canyon, the crows squawking in the wind through the pines. Sensei Jokai actually led the retreat, and many of you know him, and his partner Yushin lived here at the center when she was working on her master's degree. Unfortunately, I think it was UCLA instead of SC, but that's another talk. So, Jokai was scheduled to do the talk, but Roshi Tenshin, who's the abbot there, ended up doing the talk for him. And it was really quite a wonderful talk. And what he does often on Sundays is he opens it up. I know he told us, he said, hey, I've got a case study that we can go over, but you guys just came out of sesshin. What's arising for you? And that's how it spun off. It was really, really wonderful. But he's talked about one of the major parts of Buddhism is the transformation of greed, anger, and ignorance. And he said they become the three hidden treasures. Isn't that interesting? Of course, we've added a couple of them, lust and envy, so our 3 has gone to 5. Yamada Kohen says our sufferings are sicknesses. But if we have no sufferings, we would never have any will to practice. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, your suffering and my suffering are the basic condition for us to enter the Buddha's heart and for the Buddha to enter our hearts. The Buddha, for over 45 years when he taught, said over and over repeatedly, I teach only suffering and the transformation of suffering. Sensei Kohen was up at the California Men's Colony where I do work with prisoners. This was a few months back. It was his last visit up there. And so whenever he visits, he gets to do the talk. So he had with him one of the volumes of the Pali Canon. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pali Canon. It's the Theravadan. It's all these Buddhist scriptures. It's huge. What do they say in the talk? That's Trump. Huge. It's huge. And It's over six. I have 4 volumes in my collection. 4 volumes, over 6,000 pages. So it's a lot. So anyway, he has one of these tomes, and I can't remember which one it was. Maybe the long. I can't remember what it was. Long discourse, something like that. But so he was ready to do his talk, and it was going to be a condensed talk of one that he'd done at the Santa Barbara Zen Center. So he was getting ready, and then he paused. And he said, just sit. If you're sitting well and understand the 4 Noble Truths, which of course includes the Eightfold Path, you'll be okay. This is the essence of practice. So simple, right? Roshi Tenshin, in that same exchange with many of us, also had some other inspiring words. We worry about the world and all that, and he said, the world supports us no matter how fucked up we are. And I would add, the Sangha supports us in the same way. I've been working with Geshe and some others on the rollout of the Sangha Sutra, which is ZCLA's ethics documents. We've already had a couple meetings. One was March 1st with the residents here, and then the rollout to the general Sangha was last Sunday. And it really hit me, not unlike what Roshi Tenshin was talking about, the 3 poisons. That this Sangha Sutra has risen kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. And during the residential, I'm going to back up a little bit, during the residential meeting, one of the residents had mentioned, she'd read the document, said, why didn't we have anything in there about racism, hate speech, white privilege, which are obviously so prevalent in our society? And I know Roshi paused, but then she said, you know what, that's come out of our own experience here at ZCLA. Our own experience with addiction, sexual misconduct, and power abuse. So one of my comments was, those are our hidden treasures. And the Sangha Sutra in our current Sangha have come out of those episodes. In the same, Roshi was sitting almost next to me, and she said, yeah, it's our shadowed treasures. So your own shadows, your own poisons may have brought you to this practice. So how's your sitting going? For some of you, this is your first session, multiple hours. Are you calm, cool, and collected? Or are you experiencing what we call monkey mind? There's a cute story about, a Zen story about a man and a horse. The horse is galloping quickly, and it appears that the man on the horse is going somewhere very important. Another man standing alongside the road shouts, "Hey, where are you going?" And the first man replies, "I don't know, ask the horse." Is your life like that? So this horse can be our habit energy, pulling us along. And sometimes we feel pretty powerless. Whoa! Or like Roshi said in a recent talk, stop it. I changed things around in the talk here a little bit because of the face-to-face and things that were coming up there. So this is a new experience for many of you. How's your oryoki going? in your service positions. As some of you have been thrown into brand new service positions. You know, Nagi, speaking of Oryoki, Nagasita Buckley was actually one of my mentors doing prison work, but was one of the teachers here, but was out of the Korean, Vietnamese Zen tradition. And he hated Oryoki. And he thought that for sure that it was Dogen playing nasty tricks on his monks. I can relate to that. So, have you been caught up in your mistakes? Well, take solace in Dogen's comment that a Zen master's life is one continuous mistake. Dharma Joy uses that phrase often. That's the first time I heard it, actually, was Dharma Joy. Now, I researched that, and what he actually said, the translation, there is the principle of the way, capital W, that we must make one mistake after another. There is the principle of the way that we must make one mistake after another. So, do you have anxiety over your imperfections? Your inability to maybe get it just right? Or maybe you consider yourself perfect and instead have anxiety over the imperfection of others. Are you the expert? I read a blog recently. I think the guy's name is Bob Ross. And he talked about life is one continuous mistake. And he talks about BZP and AZP. BZP before Zen practice, AZP after Zen practice. He said BZP, those mistakes would stay with me long after I made them, and I wouldn't have been able to let go of them. Now, I'm able to genuinely laugh at myself and even hope that others are laughing at me too, to momentarily ease whatever pain they might be going through that day. AZP, I am able to look forward to my next mistake. Another great Zen master said, no mistakes, just happy accidents. So, I really relate to this, but I added another acronym, BBZP, before and beginning Zen practice. I would get so attached and caught up in my screw-ups, hitting the wrong bell, go and cry in Dokusan. It would be the focus of my sitting the whole day, beating myself up that I'd done something wrong. So, have you been making some mistakes? Or are you looking at them as just happy accidents? Something just arose, and that was the last session. I was the head server, and as you've seen Jichijo do after they do the offering on the altar, they turn around and you let everybody know what they're about to eat, what the Tenzo has prepared. So I was going through, there's something in the Buddha bowl, there's something in the middle bowl, and there's Tai Chi in the other bowl. Well, everybody was laughing. I said, what's so funny? Oh, chai tea. So to be in harmony with the wholeness of things is not to have anxiety over imperfections. But do you really get that? And back to this beginner's mind. Yamada Koen, who does commentaries on some of the koan collections, in one of his commentaries he said, "You're told to become like a baby. A newborn baby has nothing in her head. When she's hungry, she cries." Harada Roshi often told his students to become babies. A certain woman took this advice a little too literally and started taking her clothes off in the Dokusan room and had to be told to stop. This, of course, was carrying it a little bit too far. So when we say become like a baby, it doesn't mean in that way. It means making your mind like that of a baby. And when I read about that, I have an Episcopal background, as some of us in this room do. And Matthew 18, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Isn't that interesting? I looked into it deeper, though, and some of the theologians were equating this with just helplessness. And others as humbleness. And I don't know that many children that are real humble. Others as theologians would talk about innocence, and that resonated a little bit more. Meister Eckhart again. "Theologians may quarrel, but the mystics of the world speak the same language." Blanche Hartman, a Zen teacher, talks about this, beginner's mind, saying beginner's mind is Zen practice in action. It's the mind that is innocent of preconceptions and expectations, judgments and prejudices. Beginner's mind is just present to explore and observe and see things as they are. Don't we hear that a lot? See as is. That's on Shuso's fans. I think it actually just changed, but it used to be see as is. So she likewise talks about children, saying that I think a beginner's mind is the mind that faces life like a small child, full of curiosity and amazement. I wonder what this is. I wonder what that is. What is it? What does this mean? So it's without approaching things with a fixed point of view or some prior judgment. Just asking, what is it? Wonder and amazement. And that reminded me of some lines from a Mary Oliver poem, which happens to be When Death Comes. And she wrote, "When it's over, I want to say I have been a bride, married to amazement. I've been a bridegroom, taking the world into my arms." That's beginner's mind. I also have a lot of experience with grandchildren. I have 8 of them now. And they are curiosity personified. And a joy to be with, except every time I come back from Austin, Texas, I have a cold. Many years ago, I journaled, and I wrote, the more I practice, the more I'm in awe and amazement of the 10,000 things, even the mundane, perhaps especially the mundane. And for those of you that don't know, the 10,000 things refers to like all phenomena. So all of this talk about beginner's mind and being like a child, Doesn't it sound like not knowing? One of our tenets, the first of our 3 tenets. So, of course, I turned to Bernie, Roshi Bernie, and he wrote, you don't arrive, this is not knowing, means entering a situation with openness and listening deeply. You don't arrive with the idea that you're going to fix something. Are you here trying to fix something? I do hospice work. And I use the 3 tenets all the time. And always remind myself I'm not seeing this patient to fix them. There's another Zen story that's fairly well known. In China, there was a teacher named Daizang who had a student named Faya. Daizang saw Faya all dressed up in his monk traveling robes with his straw sandals and his staff and a pack on his back. And Daizang said, "Where are you going?" Faya answered, "Around on a pilgrimage." Daizang said, "What's the purpose of the pilgrimage?" Bayan said, "I don't know." Daizang said, "Not knowing is most intimate." So Fayan knew in himself that he had to take back then what was a very arduous effort to make this pilgrimage, to settle on the great matter, his great matter. But he was asked, what is the purpose of the pilgrimage? And he said, I don't know. I'm just seeking. I really related to Blanche Hartman. She said, when I first started to sit Zazen, I knew I had to sit Zazen, but I did not know why. Still to this day, I know I have to sit Zazen. If you say why, I don't know. But I know I must. This is not the same knowing as the expert. So what is this enlightenment thing anyway? What are you after? Roshi Bernie, to him, this awakening was seeing the interconnectedness of life. Do you see that? His bearing witness retreats are set up, they're geared to help you do this. You're in a situation where your brain can't come up with answers, not knowing. When you're thrown into the likes of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the concentration camp, and you are immersed in the unimaginable horrors that were there, you can't grasp it. When you're living on the streets with the homeless, you can't grasp it. So he said, the word Buddha means awakened one. Awakened to what? This is my opinion. of enlightenment. He always talked about it's my opinion. This awakening keeps deepening and deepening. What do I mean by deepening? Most of us are enlightened to the oneness of our own body. I think that my arms and legs, my face, are all part of one body. Most of us are enlightened to the oneness of our own body. It seems pretty natural. He talked of Kobo Daishi, the founder of the Shōgen sect, who said that we can tell the depth of a person's enlightenment by how they serve others. If they're focused on themselves, they've awakened to the oneness of themselves. If they're focused on their family, they've awakened to the oneness of their family. If they're focused on the nation, their nation, they've awakened to the oneness of their nation, and on and on and on. And he said, in his opinion, the Dalai Lama had awakened to the oneness of the universe. And it's interesting. He has his standard for making somebody a teacher. And Bernie said, I don't even like the word empowering or transmitting. I like the word recognizing. I recognize somebody as a teacher in my family. His family is the Zen Peacemakers. If I feel they are living a life that shows they are an exemplar of someone who has awakened to the interconnectedness of life. The way you can tell the depth of a person's enlightenment is by the breadth of their service to others. Gosh, I was going to sing again tonight, but I can hear the orchestra, like at the Grammys, starting to try to drown me out. Consider yourselves lucky. I've been reading David Steindl-Rast. I don't know if any of you are familiar with David. He's a Austrian-born Benedictine monk that I just started reading not long ago. And in his, I've read a lot of Keating and Thomas Merton, also Catholic monks. And I really, really enjoy them. And then I was introduced, I was actually up at a Benedictine monastery up in Big Sur a couple months ago, and I saw David's book. And in his book, Essential Writings, he's got a section entitled Spirituality as Common Sense. He wrote, the fuller our mindfulness becomes, and the greater we become alive, the more we realize how inadequate language is. So we have to do something if we want to talk about it that heightens language. And what is that heightened language? The heightened possibility of language is poetry. And so I end with a poem. It's a little section taken from beloved Mary Oliver. It's a longer poem. This is just the last verses of it. What I loved in the beginning, I think, was mostly myself. Never mind that I had to, since somebody had to. That was many years ago. Since then, I have gone out from my confinements, though with difficulty. I mean the ones that thought to rule my heart. I cast them out. I put them on the mush pile. They will be nourishment somehow. Everything is nourishment, somehow or another. I have become the child of the clouds and of hope. I have become the friend of the enemy, whoever that is. I have become older and cherishing what I've learned. I have become younger. And what do I risk to tell you this, which is all I know? Love yourself, then forget it. Then love the world.